Shreya Upadhyaya. The world watched closely as Asia's two giants, India and China, finally broke the ice after 5 years. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Xi Jinping held a delegation-level bilateral meeting on the sidelines of the BRICS Summit in Russia's Kazan today. While PM Modi stated that India is open to having heart-to-heart conversations, he stressed on the fact that mutual trust, respect and sensitivity are imperative for the two countries to move forward. He also said that disputes must not disturb the peace at our borders. Listen in.
एक्सेलेंसी, आपसे मिलकर खुशी है और जैसा आपने कहा 5 साल के बाद हमारी ये फॉर्मल मीटिंग हो रही है। हमारा मानना है कि भारत और चीन के संबंधों का महत्व केवल हमारे लोगों के लिए ही नहीं, लेकिन वैश्विक शांति, स्थिरता और प्रगति के लिए भी हमारे संबंध बहुत अहम है। एक्सेलेंसी, सीमा पार पिछले 4 वर्षों में उत्पन्न हुए मुद्दों पर बनी सहमति का हम स्वागत करते हैं। सीमा पर शांति और स्थिरता बनाए रखना हमारी प्राथमिकता रहनी चाहिए। म्यूचुअल ट्रस्ट, म्यूचुअल रिस्पेक्ट और म्यूचुअल सेंसिटिविटी हमारे संबंधों का आधार बने रहना चाहिए। आज इन सभी विषयों पर बात करने का अवसर मिला है। मुझे विश्वास है कि हम खुले मन से बातचीत करेंगे और हमारी चर्चा कंस्ट्रक्टिव होगी। धन्यवाद।
The External Affairs Ministry also stated that the journey to normalize ties with China has begun. This meeting, remember, comes 2 days after India and China agreed to restore patrolling in the Depsang Plains and Demchok region, marking a significant headway in efforts to resolve the military standoff along the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh. PM Modi is on his way back from Russia, but as the BRICS Summit concluded today, for India, it was historic and positive for more ways than one. Let's get a better and clearer perspective on this. On Global Mirror, I'm joined by Veena Sikri. She's a former ambassador. I'm also joined by Dr. Atul Kumar, fellow at ORF, National Security and China Studies. We're also expecting Pelman Grigory, chairperson for OneFuture Forum, to join us shortly. Good evening. Namaskar to both of you. Ambassador Veena Sikri, let me begin with you. This is historic in many ways. This was an absolutely crucial and significant bilateral meeting that not just the two countries, India and China, were watching closely, but the entire world had its eyes on. For you, what did you make of the meeting, the kind of body language that the two leaders had? Clearly, not the usual diplomacy that we see from Prime Minister Modi, and understandably so, there was a certain message being sent across. But what did you make of the entire bilateral talk today?
Well, I think they were significant. There's no doubt about it. That when two leaders, the Prime Minister of India and the Prime Minister of China, meet for formal talks after a gap of 5 years, A, it is very important, and B, you wonder what has gone before to prevent the talks for the last 5 years, and how are you going to overcome them to continue the talks. For one thing, they have decided to renew the full gamut of relationships. For example, the special representative talks on the border issues that is being resumed after a gap of 5 years again, and the foreign minister level meetings will also resume, and the number of other interactions that have held that are there between India and China on various bilateral forums. So that's a very significant factor. But most significant of all is the breakthrough on the border in East Ladakh. Because we do know that 5 years ago, in 2020, 4 years ago, May and June 2020, there were the incidents in the Galwan Valley. We lost our soldiers, 20 of them were martyred. Chinese also lost perhaps up to 40, although they have not acknowledged that. And it was a great problem because there were 6 or 7 points along the border in East Ladakh along the LAC, the line of actual control, where there were serious problems. And over the years, through meetings of the working committee, the working committee on border and on the military level, a lot of the problems have been overcome, but two were outstanding: the Depsang Plain and Demchok. And these, our foreign minister had said repeatedly that unless these are solved, unless you go to the pre-2020 situation, there can be no resumption of normal relations. And 2 days ago, yesterday and day before, we heard that yes, an agreement had been reached, and the process of disengagement had been agreed upon. So this is very important, and we now are talking of disengagement first, and then possibly de-escalation on even demilitarization. But I think that this breakthrough is important. Why was it held up for all this while? Why was it not happening all this while? Is there any reason why China has now decided finally to agree to it and to agree to go back to the pre-2020 situation? I mean, it is true that China has blinked on this issue because they were holding it up for 4 years. And now, by doing so, it could be because of the Chinese economy. I think they are definitely wanting to revive their economy. Stimuluses are being offered. And for them, the trade with India is important. The investment in India is important. So I think we have to look at it from that point of view. This is the give and take. So we get the border. We hope to get even more on the border.
Absolutely, Ambassador Sikri, major domestic factors perhaps contributing more than, the global developments that are happening. Let me also welcome Pelman Grigory, Chairperson for OneFuture Forum on Global Mirror. Pelman Grigory, how do you see this? This was a crucial meeting between India and China that was taking place after 5 years. India has thanked the Russian president for providing us with that sort of space where both leaders could have that, bilateral meeting. But for Russia, the kind of placement that we have seen for leaders of both India and China next to President Putin clearly reflects the kind of importance that Russia places on both countries as partners.
Yes, thank you for invitation for this forum, and I think it's one of the most important event on the BRICS forum, the meeting of two leaders of the great countries. I think BRICS now play a very important role, not just an economical community, not only the new order for political life, new order for economical life, new order for cultural life, but it's also a great and wonderful place for looking and creating the peace in the world. And the most important thing between partners in business and in diplomacy, it's trust and open relations. And BRICS Summit in Kazan exactly is providing this platform just to make open and friendly relation, and the place where people can start and political leaders can start to trust each other and to talk about the future, one future, and about the peace regulations of all different conflicts. And in this case, Mr. Putin provided a very great work to support for this meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Secretary General of Xi Jinping.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the big takeaways and the big highlights and the Russian goals of what it wanted to achieve from this year's BRICS Summit. But let me also get in Dr. Atul Kumar into this conversation. Dr. Atul Kumar, we've been talking about how historic and significant this entire bilateral meeting has been between India and China. And the Prime Minister today talked about how there has to be and there needs to be mutual trust, respect and sensitivity between the two countries, clearly indicating the fact that, we are open to having conversations and mending ties, but we're also careful and aware of whether China follows what it says, of what China implements on ground. And that sort of reflects how India is viewing this moving forward in the relationship with China, isn't it? The fact that we don't have a 200% trust on you, but we're closely watching what you're doing and that your words and actions should match.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Look, the trust is difficult to come by. We knew that some sort of discussion was going on when in April 2024, Mr. Modi mentioned that a stable and peaceful relationship between India and China is good for the world and also good for the region. So the discussions were always on, and the back-channel discussions were also happening. And then there were like back-to-back WMCC meetings, and Mr. Jaishankar was meeting Wang Yi, Mr. Doval was also meeting Wang Yi. So meetings were going on. But the point is, India had already put its foot down that unless the border situation resolves, there'll be no more meeting and no more discussions on any other issues, for example, economy or politics or diplomacy. So when the border issue became a little bit resolvable, then only the whole issue has started come back on the track. But the problem here is when you talk about pre-2020 situation, we had already achieved pre-2020 situation by the time we finished the fifth buffer zone. These two issues which are happening in Depsang and Demchok, these are pre-2020 problems, which Modi government inherited. And they have
Yeah.
actually been able to find some sort of resolution to even those issues, which is remarkable. So whatever is happening right now, it has been happening. A lot of back channel work has already happened. What we are seeing is a little bit of opening up, which will include the entire disengagement. But how we will go from here is basically both countries are going to watch each other and the way the things kind of open up.
Yeah, yeah. Pelman Grigory, from what Russia wanted to achieve from the BRICS Summit, especially the fact that it held it in the heartland in Kazan, really reflects that President Vladimir Putin wanted to send across a message, particularly to the West, to the European countries, that Russia is not isolated despite the kind of sanctions you've been slapping against us, that countries from across the world, that democracies from across the world are gathering in Russia to hold talks with Russia. Was that aim achieved successfully with this BRICS summit? And for you, what have been the big takeaways for Russia from the summit?
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. It's a big message to the West, but it's not only that Russia is not isolated, but it's not the only one task. The main task is just to create a cooperation between the countries, with countries, what we named the Global South, Islamic countries, Christian countries, and all other different religions, what you can find in these countries. And in this case, I think it's one of the most significant events during the history, worldwide history, because it's meeting BRICS countries, and cooperation in BRICS is based on absolutely different models, on absolutely different values. It's open agreement, it's bilateral agreement and cooperation, and it's cooperation in different aspects of the business, culture, science, health. So in this case, yes, the world is see that the ideas to from the Western countries, from United States, to isolate Russia and to go and to expect that Russia will be collapsed after 2 years of isolation. It's not go on. So it's wonderful results that economical system and economical power of Russia is growing, and growing much faster than Western countries, and cooperation in the BRICS countries. It's already achieved significant values. More than 30% of the national worldwide national product is now produced in countries belonging to participate in BRICS. So I think it's really a very important and significant event, and it's show the perspective, the new platform on which it's possible to grow financial system, commodity exchange, and a lot of different initiatives was put in a list.
Okay. Ambassador Veena Sikri, largely this entire BRICS grouping has been seen by the West as an anti-West grouping. Of course, India likes to call it the non-West grouping because of the kind of members we have if not anti-West in its stance. How do you think India wants to take this forward, and how do you think BRICS has had an impact in terms of the kind of goals it has set for itself?
Well, I think that first of all, India is committed to the concept of multipolarity, multi-alignment, or you can call it. This is our policy of strategic autonomy. So, in that sense, we feel it is equally important to pursue the relationship with BRICS, to pursue the growth of BRICS as a grouping, to pursue all the goals that BRICS can share among themselves, whether it is on digital financial infrastructure, whether it is on the environment, on trade, on health, and so many other issues. But equally, we're pursuing also with Quad and with so many, with the G7 and many other groupings. So certainly, we see it as an important non-Western grouping, and it's very much a part of India's leadership of the global South. I think after India's very successful chairmanship of the G20, when we got the African Union in as a new member of the G20 and G21, we have really shown, and we've had the summits of the Global South, virtual summits of the Global South, about 3 of them so far. So I think that this is very important for India. If we want a rules-based international order, if we want a more equitable order, then the Global South must be together. And it is very important that all the issues of the Global South, they are shared by Russia, by China, and all the other members of BRICS. So I think getting everybody together on this page is important. The Kazan Declaration is a very detailed and very good and strong document. The issue now is implementation. So I think this is very important for all the countries who have signed on to the Kazan Declaration to focus on the implementation and to carry it forward, because that's the only way in which they will be able to be a force to reckon with, to get the global order to be more equitable. I mean, this whole question of sanctions against individual countries, or blocking bank accounts, or freezing accounts, and so on, this is something which is very disturbing. So I think that all the governments are looking at these issues. They're looking at alternative methods of payment. They're looking at using national currencies. They're usually looking at, there's an independent organization, an independent bank for the development bank, it's called. So I think that it's very significant that this meeting has not only shown the good unity of views through the Kazan Declaration, but it has made it possible for our Prime Minister to meet leaders. Like, he had a meeting with President Putin, and very significantly, President Putin said he welcomed Prime Minister Modi taking the steps forward to get, the Ukraine-Russia war to come to an end.
Yeah.
He met the president of Iran. The president of Iran said the same thing about our Prime Minister for the Middle East. And then, of course, he had the meeting with President Xi Jinping, which has laid a new, which has revived the various multifaceted relationship which was there earlier. But this is still contingent on peace and tranquility at the border. Because this is some very important point that our Prime Minister made, that peace and tranquility at the border remains paramount. And we have to find a way of going ahead on everything we want to, while maintaining peace and tranquility at the border. So I think all in all, it has been a very successful visit. And
Ambassador
certainly
Veena
the BRICS
Sikri,
is an organization that should grow.
Yeah. Yeah, Ambassador Sikri, even as we talk about how successful this bilateral meeting was and how India and China are now, moving forward in mending their ties, Dr. Atul Kumar, even if we look at this bilateral agreement and bilateral meeting that happened today, there will always be concerns about, who wants to be the leader of the Global South. India has been pitching itself as the voice of the Global South. Clearly, China would, have its issues with that. But with this bilateral meeting happening, the ties getting mended, if not, overnight, gradually, how do you think that's going to move forward? Because that tussle of the Asia dominance will always remain between the two countries.
Look, the tussle will definitely remain, but the problem is right now, both China and India are in a situation which is where they need to develop their economy more. Chinese economy is in a complete doldrum, especially their industrial overcapacity, the kind of unemployment they have, the kind of trade embargoes they're getting, and all sort of tariffs which are being applied by Canada, US, EU on their all sort of industries. That is creating huge amount of trouble for inside China and also outside China. For us, the problem is our trade with China has shot more than $100 billion now, and most of it is imports from China. So now the discussion inside India is basically what you want. Are you going to import everything from China, or are you going to invite the Chinese companies to invest inside India and produce it here so that the budget deficit goes down and we are in a better situation economically? So first and foremost, especially after the COVID, when the whole international economy is completely disturbed and also the international peace and conflict situation is disturbed, right now the main focus is on economy. And that's what brings both these countries closer together. Obviously, the Indian stand was there that border has to be resolved in some way. That has been taken care of. So I have a hunch that the economic situation and economic relations will definitely take off. And if you remember, even in our economic survey, we were saying that we do need Chinese investments right now, because whatever we buy from China, it's cheaper, and we are buying all sort of industrial and capital goods. If we want to buy those things from West, it will be almost like 3 to 4 times prices. So we can't develop our economy without China, and that's why the economic situation is far more important than other issues right now.
Yeah. As much as we talk about how we need to reduce our dependence on China, I think the world has not been able to do that entirely post-COVID, something that was talked about largely considering the fact that, global supply chains were disrupted, and India then pitched forward and wanted companies to come and invest in India. That has happened with companies choosing India over China, but not, not majorly. It's still a long way ahead. But quickly, before I wrap up, Pelman Grigory, to you, what are your expectations now? How does it move forward? Russia is embroiled in a war with Ukraine. There are, of course, sanctions after sanction coming against Russia and its presidents. There is clearly an evolved geopolitical order that has taken place that has, now divided countries across the world. How do you see this really moving forward in terms of the support that you've got from the BRICS members?
I think BRICS show a very good message. First of all, to the Western countries, that the idea of isolation and collapsing of the Russian economy doesn't work. So in the nearest future, also Western politicians and Western people will recognize this. BRICS Summit is a very, very important summit all over the world, and it will be not just possible not to not present this event in the media. So, and in the media it will be a lot of positive reaction, and the media will be also a critical position of the political situation and discrimination of Russia, of sanction. And I think it will lead to the, first of all, for different peacemaking initiatives, and also to recognition of the real situation for the real politicians. I think the most big changes in political life, in political parties, will happen in Europe next year. And it will be thanks to this event.
All right, we'll leave it there.
I definitely believe this.
I have paucity of time, Pelman, but we'll leave it there. Let's wait and watch how this moves forward. Thank you very much, Pelman Grigory, Dr. Atul Kumar, and Ambassador Veena Sikri for joining us on Global Mirror and sharing your perspective. Thank you very much. With that, viewers, it's a wrap on this broadcast. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Bye-bye. Up next is Neha Koshi with Beyond the Headline.